Hello and welcome to my fourth video in my FSX tutorial series. Today we're going to look at descending and most importantly landing. Unfortunately I do need to bore you with a little bit of theory this time around, but I'll keep it to a bare minimum so we can enjoy learning how to land properly and hopefully in one piece. So let's jump into the plane and look at descending quickly. Okay, so here we are flying along at 3,000 feet just now. And obviously if we want to get back on the ground we need to lose altitude and we need to descend. So the easiest way that I've found to do this is to simply reduce the throttle. If we have a look down here is the sort of, I think it's called the tachometer. This is how fast the engine is running just now. So what we'll do is we'll pull back the throttle until it's running at about 1800, 1900 RPM. And you'll see that the nose will start to drop towards the ground. Going up to this instrument here, I like to aim for about a minus 500 feet per minute rate of descent. So it's not too fast, not too slow, and you may need to trim the plane to maintain that. And the third thing to check would also be to check the speed. Just make sure that the speed doesn't pick up too fast as well. But if you're doing it by reducing the throttle, then the speed shouldn't get out of control, but it's just something to obviously keep an eye on. For people who are maybe this is your first time in a simulator, or you're new to simulator or new to flying, what I would recommend doing is to set your weather to clear, because what this does is this just removes all sort of weather effects and all wind effects, and it just makes it nice and easy for your first time sort of flying and landing and practice and all the rest of it. So we're coming down nicely, we're around about 500 feet, you don't need to be strict with it. We're at 2,300 feet almost just now. What I like to do is I like to level off at about 2,000 feet. I find that 2,000 feet is a good height to begin your approach. So when we get down to that, we'll sort of level off and we'll start flying straight and level again. So just scanning each of the instruments. So I'm looking at the speeds to make sure we're not going too fast or too slow. Watching the altitude here. Watching the vertical speed here. So at 2,100 now. So we're just getting ready to pull back in the controls. So start doing it nice and early. And we'll just level off at 2,000 feet. And also remember, when you level off, to put the throttle back to increase your power again. Because if you try and hold it level and you don't have enough power, the plane will basically slow down and essentially fall out of the sky, which obviously we don't want to happen. Okay, so we're back at 2,000 feet now. Sorry, now we're down at 2,000 feet rather. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video here and we're going to learn some theory. So I'll see you there shortly. Firstly, there's a couple of fancy words I need to explain. The first word is glide slope. What is the glide slope? Basically, there's an ideal angle to descend and approach the runway. That is on a 3-degree downward slope in relation to the ground. Keep that in mind because I'll be talking about the glide slope again shortly. The second word is flare. You probably already know that when a plane lands, it tends to touch its back wheels down first and then the nose wheel after. The act of pulling back on the controls to make sure that the main wheels touch the ground first is called flaring the plane, or to flare the plane. And that's something that we'll do when I come to show you the landing shortly. Okay, there's a couple more things I need to cover which are both important for approach and landing. Firstly, let's look at the runway and what all the numbers and lines mean. Working from right to left, the first marking you'll see is the threshold marker, which represents the end of the runway and also how wide the runway is. Next you have the runway number, which is determined by the runway's heading on the 360-degree compass. If you were stood at this end of the runway, looking towards the opposite end, you'd be facing a heading of 230. The runway number takes the first two numbers, therefore you're left with runway 23. Next up is a touchdown zone marker. These markings extend down the runway and represent the area where you actually land the plane. The markings represent certain distances because larger aircraft need to take into account how much runway they need to land and come to a stop. Next we have the centre line, which very simply shows you the centre of the runway. And lastly you have the aim point marker. This is what a pilot focuses on as he or she gets closer to the runway. If you were to continue flying towards the runway at that ideal downward angle, the glide slope, this is effectively where you would touch the ground. You'll more often see these markings as big solid white rectangles on the runway. So now we know where we need to actually touch down on the runway, but how on earth do we make sure we get there when we're miles away from the airport? This is where the glide slope comes into play. At most airports there's a set of lights which sit on the side of the runway which help us know if we're following the glide slope or not. These are PAPI lights. PAPI stands for Precision Approach Path Indicator. These lights will change from red to white depending on your height in relation to the glide slope. You'll see what I mean in a second. There is an alternative lighting system which works very similar to the PAPI lights, which is called VASI. VASI stands for Visual Approach Slope Indicator. Instead of having 4 lights in a row, this has 2 sets of 2 lights arranged like this. Here's an overview of how the lights change depending on your height on approach. Basically, if you're mainly seeing white lights, you're too high, you're above the glide slope and you need to descend a bit more to get back onto that ideal angle. If you're seeing red lights, you're too low and you're under the glide slope. Usually the best way to recover this is to fly level, hold your current altitude for a short time and you'll fly back into the glide slope again. You'll see this happen when I show you the landing in a second. What you're looking for is the middle ground, both red and white lights to show that you're bang on target. Also, as a side note, I've actually made this overview page available for download in the description below, so if you think this will help you when you come to try and land, please feel free to download it. Okay, enough theory, let's put all of this to good use. Okay, welcome back. So here we are at 2,000 feet, and you've got Inverness Airport in front of us just now. Hopefully you can see you can just about see the runway and the lighting system on the left hand side there. At the moment it looks like we've got 4 red lights, so that means we're underneath the glide slope. What we're going to do is we're just going to hold 2,000 feet until we have 2 red and 2 white lights. Because basically what we're going to do is we're going to fly into that glide slope path, and that's what's called intercepting the glide slope. So we're just going to hold everything steady just now. I think we've got, well, I said it's quite bad, but I think we've got 1 white light there now, so we're almost there. I think that's two white and 2 red there, so what I'll do is, as before, we'll start reducing the power and start descending. While we're this far out, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to put the first stage of flaps out, and that'll just help us kind of get our speed down nice and early. What you want to do is, you want to try and get the plane sort of ready for landing as early as possible, so that means getting the speed down and getting the flaps extended as early as possible, so that then you can concentrate on just flying the plane and making sure that it's you're going to get it on the runway basically. So we've got first stage of flaps out there, slowed down quite nicely, which is good. And I think it's difficult to tell this far out, but I think we've got 2 white and 2 red lights, so that's perfect. Okay, so the way I'm managing my rate of descent at the moment, when you're on the glide slope, in the Cessna it's about 400 feet per minute is the rate of descent that you want. So, and the way I'm managing that is just by managing the power. So if I want to, if I want a lower rate of descent, meaning I'm descending slower, I'll increase the power. Or if I want a faster rate of descent, I'll decrease power. But I think we're holding okay just now, so I think we're slightly too low. So what I'll do is I'll increase power just ever so slightly. It's just the tiniest of movement on your controls, and you see the nose is raising up slightly. We're still got good sort of alignment with the runway there. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my second stage of flaps out and watch the plane because it reacts quite interestingly. Flaps going out, and you see the nose pitches up. And what happens is the nose will fall back down again, but what you want to do is you want to just pull back slightly as the nose starts to fall down, and just kind of like catch that basically. Just trim the aircraft. And if you look at the speed now, you see we've lost about another 10 knots, so we're around about 70 knots, which is a good speed. So yeah, when you're approaching, you want to kind of try and balance the amount of pitch, which is the up and down movement here. You want to try and balance that with the amount of throttle that you're using. Because effectively what you're doing is you're controlling your vertical speed with the throttle, and you're controlling the airspeed with the pitch there, with the sort of the joystick, the up and down, and obviously you're keeping yourself in line by sort of turning the plane left and right. And when you're approaching, it's just very, very gentle movements that you want. Lined up quite nicely. We've got 2 white and 2 red lights, so we're bang on at the moment. Everything's going well. Famous last words. So just making sure we're lined up nicely, and I think what I'll do is I'll put the 30 degrees of flaps. I'll extend just now. The plane again, if you watch, plane raises up. What we'll do is just pull back on the stick slightly, just to catch that. And if you look at the speed now, we're down at almost 60 knots, which is around about the speed that we want, so that's really good. 16, when you're coming into land, about 60 knots before you reach the runway is a good speed. Slightly too high, so just let the nose drop down slightly. Reduce throttle a little bit as well. So the plane's ready to land now, so all we're doing is we're just concentrating on flying the plane. So we're back on, so we're just pulling back on the stick slightly. Speed is good. Okay, so for the actual touchdown, what I'm going to do is when we hit the threshold, the very end of the runway, is I'm going to gently reduce the power to idle, and then just as we get very close to the aim point markers that you should be able to see clearly now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull back on the stick. Whoa, there's a plane taking off. Bad news. God, he's put me off. Yeah, just as we get down to the runway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull back on the stick gently and just hold some gentle back pressure on the stick, and then the plane should just touch down nice and gently. So speed is good, so now we're just concentrating on putting it on the ground. So going over the threshold, so slowly bring it down. Okay, so just start pulling back now. Just pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back, and touch down. Nice and gentle. Then we'll just hit the brakes and come to a stop here on the runway. And that is how you land a plane. It is difficult, I'm not going to lie, it is very difficult. There is a lot of things that you're trying to do at the same time, so really don't worry if you struggle with it. You know, it does take a bit of practice, but after a while, sort of everything kind of becomes automatic. It's like driving a car, you know, you kind of get used to doing several things at once, and then, you know, just actually controlling the plane just becomes one kind of one action. So if you're struggling with it, it does get easier, trust me. So all it needs is just a little bit of practice and you'll get there. If you've got any questions about it, or if you're having any difficulties, or if you find that you're making mistakes over and over, please leave a comment below, and I'll try and answer and help you out as best as I can. And again, as always, thanks for watching. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to be learning how to do circuits. So that will involve taking off, climbing, turning, flying level, descending, and landing. So it's a good way of practicing all the skills that we've learned in the first few videos. Yeah, thanks again for watching. Any comments or questions or anything, as I said, leave them below. If you're liking these videos, please give me a thumbs up and let me know. Because I'm not sure if I'm trying my best to kind of produce good quality videos here, but if you could give me a thumbs up or a comment, just let me know if it's good or not, if I need to maybe tweak anything, if I can make anything better. I'm always open to constructive criticism as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you later.